I've just prepared some ideas, reflections on my experience in teaching. And just as a bit of background, that I went to the Unification Theological Seminary and then went as a missionary to Russia and spent 9 years in Russia. So it was a really good experience. Then I came back to Britain and was challenged to find some job. This is me. Yeah, so I thought I'd find easily a job related to kind of administrative work that I was doing in my role in Russia, in fact, with the headquarters work. But because none of that experience was on paper, it wasn't any qualifications or anything, then actually I found it very difficult to find a job. And so at that time, I have a degree in physics, and there's definitely a teacher shortage in Britain. Absolutely. And so, it seemed like the best opportunity to become a teacher. But certainly I had that feeling that it was my second choice. It wasn't what I was really thought that I could do, and I was really convinced about it. And that thought in my mind was not very helpful, actually. I was thinking, well, I'm only doing this because I couldn't find anything else. And I certainly had quite a hard time for the first few years. So, my story is one of not being very successful at the beginning. I remember in my, was it in NQT year or? I think no, during the training year, then there were several times where I completely broke down and had to sort of run away to a corner, because in the school it's very hard. You can't break down in front of the students, so you have to sort of run away and break down somewhere else. And so I had various mentors and so on. But so anyway, just one of these situations, I went and I was saying, I'm not a people person. And I remember this mentor looking at me and thinking, well, the message was, why are you trying to be a teacher then? and I, there's lots of things that I did. I got really mixed up during that period, and it was not easy. And I almost failed that training year. Now, I was told, you are going to fail. You're not going to get past this training.
Were you doing teacher training?
Yeah, when I was doing the teacher training. When I was doing my probationary year. So there's a teacher training year, and then there's a probationary year. So NQT, as it's called, newly qualified teacher year. So I had to pass that to become a qualified teacher. So I only had the choice of leaving that school and then trying to find another school that would train me. And I thought that was it. I thought,
And you did?
I'm finished. I'm not going to do it. But I was encouraged by various people, Williams being one. But also the teachers at the school actually were really, really helpful and supportive, particularly the head of science department. And, he said, well, try independent schools. And, so he gave me various support. And I applied to a lot of independent schools. And, by some miracle, I got a job in an independent school. Well, it was a miracle. It was supported by lots of people and lots of other forces outside myself. So anyway, I got a job. So I've been teaching in the same school. I never dared move. For the last, 17 years now.
Wow.
So, no, it's not. No, sorry. 2003, 16 years now, yeah.
You still like it?
So yeah. I mean, so the first 10 years were very difficult. And finally, I got used to it after about 10 years. So there we are. That's my background. I think one of the things so I teach science, and in this school, I teach almost entirely physics. I've taught a little bit of biology, a little bit of chemistry. All science teachers are expected to teach all three, but physics has always been a shortage subject. So science teachers who can teach physics, they generally end up teaching only physics. So anyway, that's what I do. I think that the thing that I find really encouraging and motivating is that the science itself is really exciting and really interesting, and it's a subject that I enjoy exploring, and I like to convey that to my students. And definitely, after that first period of challenge, the thing that really made a difference to me in school was that I started a club, so a club for inventing things, and I enjoyed that, So it was exciting, and it gave me a sense of my own identity within the school, and obviously it made me interact with lots of different people and gain some respect, and it meant that outside the classroom then I had an opportunity to do lots of different things. So the club's called the Heath Robinson Club. He's an artist. He's quite well known in Britain. He's very English artist, and he drew pictures of machines and contraptions. And so anyway, that was our inspiration. He happened to be local to where I live. That's why it was something significant for me.
How inspiring.
So it was exciting. So that's really what has made a lot of difference to me in terms of my ability to be a teacher and have that confidence to do what I do. The big thing that I find with science that's interesting is you're introducing young people to a sense of reality, a sense of what is out there, and there's lots of debates about what we mean by reality and so on, but the fact is that we learn about the world around us, and that way we learn about ourselves. And so there's lots of lessons that are learned not just about the physical world but also about ourselves. So when I'm teaching science, then I'm very aware of parallels between what I teach and more internal things about being a person and what my beliefs are and so on, what other people's beliefs are. So that during teaching, I know that the way I think has an influence on what I teach and how I teach it. So there is that, first of all, that's the sense of excitement about being able to create things in the world. So, we've had opportunities to go to CERN in Switzerland, the Nuclear Research Center, and to, it's exciting to teach about space, and, there's lots of things that students get excited about, and there's a sense that's kind of leading towards whatever can happen in the future in terms of the progress of technology and exploration. So that's an exciting part. And then there's just the more down-to-earth aspects of learning, which, you know, working out how things work and how can you fix things, how do you make things do what you want them to do. And that's certainly part of what I do in the club in terms of making things. But I mean, that's I think that's a good thing about physics, that it has that particular aspect of how things work, and it's quite easy, or at least I find it quite easy to find examples of physical principles in simple things, you know, the microwave oven or the carpet or the chair or just things around us and how they work and what makes them strong or break or whatever, that kind of thing. So that's one of the things that certainly I feel I'm teaching through physics. And the other is I'm teaching people to think logically, or how to reason, how to recognize that there is reason. You know, there's a lot of things that are very confusing. A lot of the things that Barbara was talking about, very confusing. But certainly in physics, then, you know, there's a greater sense of clarity and definition of life and logic and reason, and a sense that, yes, the world is reasonable. There is a way of working out what's going on around us. So, and that's something which is personal and encouraging to an individual, that we work out, you know, oh yeah, I can work out things in my life. I can do things. I can see how to solve problems, and that's another aspect of teaching physics, which I find is really rewarding. And then, you know, other things like dealing with numbers and data and measuring things, all these kind of very practical things that can be applied across a huge range of aspects of life. So I think step by step over the years of teaching, I've got to understand teenagers better. I mean, during that time that I was teaching, my children are also growing up through the same period. So they've all been teenagers, and still got one who's still a teenager. And so that understanding of students is really the vital thing about teaching. So apart from the subject, that's great. I'm really excited about the subject. Understanding teenagers was really probably the most difficult thing, because I'm starting teaching when I'm already 40-something, and being a teenager was a long time ago. And the girls as well, it's true. Yes, I grew up in a family of boys. I went to a boys' school. I'm teaching in a girls' school. So
wonderful.
So yes, it does. It takes a while to get used to, or what is the way of thinking of these girls. And so, yeah, a lot of the things which I've had to learn over the years is about what they're thinking and how to engage with the way they think. And yeah, so it took a few years to get used to that. But yes, it's very different than my experience. So that's something that I had to learn. So as a religious person, as a unificationist, then, you know, I found it very fascinating from the very beginning when I studied divine principle, the relationship between science and religion. And obviously that's very explicitly referred to in the first part of the divine principle. And for me, that's always been very engaging and interesting to explore this relationship between faith and reason and science and religion. And so these kind of questions do come up in teaching science. And it's quite curious how these things are prompted visibly to prompt questions. the law of conservation of energy has always been one of the points where suddenly I get students asking questions about religion, because it's just because of the language we use to describe the law of conservation of energy, which is that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed from one form or place to another. So it's using the word created, and it cannot be created, which immediately makes students think about God created, if they are religious, or they know that that's what religions teach. So this seems to be directly contradicting religious thought, and it makes them ask me, either they ask me if I believe in God, if that's one thing which they might ask at that point, or they ask more.
What do you say to that?
I usually say yes. It's true. I hesitated. Sometimes I avoided answering the question, rather, so ask a question to think, well, what do you think that means? So, one can dodge questions quite easily as a teacher. So there's a number of opportunities where religious belief becomes important and explicitly relevant in the classroom. But what I realize is that there's a lot of ways in which my thinking, my understanding of life just comes through anything that I do or say, and I think that's the one thing which is absolutely undeniable, is that whatever teachers do, think, say, are, that is what will get through to the students. It's no good planning to I want to teach this, and this, and want them to think this and this way, and say that's the way you're going to think because I'm telling you that's the way you're going to think. That doesn't work. I mean, and it's a horrible way of thinking, really. The way I am will influence those around me, just as a parent, the way I am is what my children pick up. No matter what I say, it's more important what I am, what I do, the relationships I have with others around me. So, but explicitly, there are some times where you start using religious language or dealing with religious questions. I think that the biggest thing with physics is that it does convey a sense that nature has principles. There are principles of creation. That there are principles behind everything, and that's very, very profound. It's a very profound thing to recognize that there is a predictable reality. It gets more complicated when you start dealing with quantum physics and Heisenberg uncertainty principle or whatever. These things that say that there's lots of uncertainties. Even in definition, we can say that we don't understand the world, and yet even we're defining the way that we can't understand the world. So it's still, there is a sense that there are principles, and I think that's quite a profound thing. Another little moment where I find myself reflecting on religious thinking is when I teach about light and the reflection of light, and I have to explain this word normal. I don't know if you've come across this word. Yeah. Normal is this line at 90 degrees to a mirror or something like that. So I have to explain, 90 degrees is normal. It's normal to have 90 degrees. My nose is at 90 degrees to my eyes, and it's actually a normal human being. And I've got to be really careful. That's where I'm going to get myself in trouble. The idea of what's normal and what's abnormal. But it does come across that way. And I say, well, this is the normal. If standing up straight is normal, and I'm at 90 degrees to the floor. And one can use examples like that. And I always remember Father loves this 90 degrees. You know, in lots of Father's sermons, there's concepts about 90 degrees and all these aspects of our physical body. Really, Stephen, it's totally unacceptable.
Yes.
It's happened to me a few times as a teacher. I've forgotten to switch off my phone. Very embarrassing. Right. So anyway, yes, those are the kind of things. Yeah. The point about being sensitive to people and the differences between individuals, it is really quite a profound and difficult thing. And yes, for example, if I say something about normal and abnormal, and it's quite easy to offend somebody. I know just talking about radiation, you know, when we teach about radiation, that black surfaces absorb radiation and white surfaces reflect radiation, all that kind of thing. And then very, very quickly, issues of race come up. It has nothing to do with it, but you know, just to mention the word black becomes significant and important, and different individuals react in different ways. A very embarrassing moment occurred for me when I was teaching about motors. So in electromagnetism, there's a left-hand rule. The force and the current and the field are at 90 degrees to each other. You remember these? So yeah, the left-hand rule. Anyway, there was one girl in this class, and she has a deformed left hand. She has missing fingers on her left hand. I think she just has 2 fingers on her left hand, and she's quite embarrassed about it. This is when she's in year 11, so she's like 15 years old, and especially at that kind of time, you know, it's quite a difficult time for young people dealing with some kind of physical disability. So anyway, she's in my class, and I was aware of her disability. I knew her, but I started teaching this lesson. So there's this left-hand rule. So everybody hold up your left hand. And I said, well, actually, you could. So immediately I stopped myself. I said, well, you could use your right hand. But you know, anyway, so I got myself in quite a little mess in that class. But it made me think about this point about when we teach. Yeah, we do need to know the students that we teach, and that's very difficult. You know, you don't know all of them, and you know, we have many different classes. You know, every year I teach about 300 different students, and I find it hard enough to remember all their names, let alone all their different characteristics and identities. So yeah, it's a big challenge for a teacher to be sensitive to individuals' needs, and that's. But I think there's a lot of forgiveness there in terms of it's a human relationship, so they can understand also that you don't know every detail about their lives. Anyway, that was a little story, but. Yeah, and I've been very moved by some of the circumstances of children in the class who, there was one who has leukemia, and is a terminal illness, and she's there as a member of the class. There were times when I was teaching about radioactivity and the effects of radiation possibly causing cancer, and then you certainly realize that you're getting into an area which can be very sensitive to those involved, and I think in all of those circumstances, then the way I behave as a person becomes really important. That I'm, if I know that that's a very difficult and serious issue for a particular person, and other people in the class, other students, are aware of that person having this disease, then I remember that time with that class, and I mean I have the same class for a whole year. Then whenever we got to topics that were related to disease, to life and death, then it was always a time when it made me think more deeply about what I was saying and how I was treating the students, and particularly this one student. And then, yes, there was a time when I was teaching her sister, but then it's just as sensitive for her, knowing that her sister's dying of this disease. So there's a lot of very real situations that come up in teaching, in terms of dealing with the way that the things that influence individuals' lives. So, I think in all of that, the key point really is that in teaching, whatever your personality is, whatever you feel, what is your thinking, then it comes through. And so it's not something which you can plan all the time and work out exactly how you're going to use it. But yeah, I have a couple of examples of where, because of what I was doing in school, I was able to convey some ideas of the principle, which I wanted to. So there were some times when I could make some definite decision about teaching something which I thought at least will put a seed of thinking into students' minds. So David, can I show this now? Yeah, make it full screen. So I had an opportunity to give a full school assembly. So this is in front of 1,000 students and all the teachers, everybody. And because of my inventors club, then I was giving an assembly about the process of creation. And it doesn't quite mean the same as the divine principle. I think put this in front of unificationists and you suddenly think it's about something else. Actually, it means the process of creating things, inventing things. But it was fun to make this. Oh, hang on. To make up this assembly and put things together. So it was actually about things that we'd made, and this was a project. And it was I was able to make some points about creativity and inventiveness. That we might invent things, but then we're also using things that were invented by somebody else. We're also using things that were invented by nature, and the nature becomes part of what we learn from, and as well as aids our creativity. So these were the kind of things that I put together. That was, I don't know. So I just wanted to explain about this process of creation and how we interact with the world around us, and it gave me this opportunity to say things about the creative process. I think this was one part of it. Okay, so I was talking about that. We get ideas maybe from books, from what we learned, our ways of thinking. We get ideas from nature. We get ideas from things that other people have created, and we put all those things together, and then we can create something new. So an opportunity to give some quotes from various people. I like this one because that's what my science lab looks like, a pile of junk. So I get kids together and we got lots of junk to play with. But yes, I was conveying this idea about give and take, and the process of creation involves give and take between thoughts and materials and old wisdom and new ideas. And you can see this looks very unificationist. Interaction between people and so on. So there we go. That was my way of conveying origin, division, union, action, in the process of creation. And it was exciting to have an opportunity to do that. But it was built on the club, really, and having made a club, then it gave me that opportunity. This was something in the framework of. Oh, sorry, it's gone. What do I do? Do I have to press F5 again?
Oh, this?
Yeah.
This is a new one?
So, personal, social, and health education, PSHE, or they added citizenship, so it's PSH, personal, social, health education.
Interesting.
That's what this area of the curriculum is called at the moment. But then they added citizenship. About 5 years ago, I can't remember when it was. So then it became PSHCE, and then in our school, they for a while they wanted to teach morality as well, so it became PSHCME. So many letters. Anyway, it kind of keeps changing the definition. But so every teacher must teach some area of PSHE. For my class, I was responsible for a sixth form class, and so I would teach them. So this is something that I prepared for them, and I think it had some good influence. It was an opportunity for me to talk about some of the kind of missionary work that I'd done in the past. More focusing on some of the, rather than teaching theological things, but focusing on some of the social projects that I did. But it certainly, my point was to convey thinking about big questions about life, and so I was able to take the opportunity of giving little quotes from religious scripture, different sources. I mean, I found them through the World Scripture book, and I was just conveying the idea of the purpose of life is joy, and so I went through several different scriptures and tried to get them to guess what the missing words were. That's the big thing about doing something for a class is not to lecture them, but to engage them with some sort of activity. So you probably know some of these. So that one's from Matthew. I'm trying to get them to guess where it came from. They're surprisingly ignorant of a lot of these. But anyway, so the purpose of life is joy. And so I was just getting to think about, well, what do they do with their life when they're not being told what to do? When you become free in the break between period 1 and 2, what do you do? And get them to think about, well, what are those gaps? And what do we think during those gaps? And then when it comes to the end of the day, what do you do? What's important to you? So, and the same in the year, and it just gave me an opportunity to prompt the idea of thinking about their life as a whole, rather than just studying. And so, yeah, we have the same structure in the year, and we got to collected ideas across the class as to what kind of things they do, and then got them to think. This is a bit depressing, actually. If you think about, exactly the same structure appears in the whole of life. At school, and then your year, and then your university, and then you think about what you're going to do in the gaps, and then there's your career, and then
Is that books or money?
I don't know, it's some sort of paperwork. And then you end up thinking, what was it all about? Anyway, the point was just to make them think of that question and consider some different possibilities of what's important in life. And so then I used the father's, I can't remember where it was from anyway, life, love, and lineage. Well, I instead of lineage, I used the word legacy, but I put those three as three steps. I mean, it's three blessings as well in one sense. And then I created this little framework of expressing the three blessings in a pictorial form. That your God, whether you believe in God or not, you have ideals, you have hopes, you have dreams. That's what you aspire to. That's very individual to you and your relationship with those things you aspire to. And what helps you then is the reality around you and your family and your society and the community, your country and the world around you, and your interaction with the environment. So it was just a way of creating that slide and putting it up in front of students. So it stimulated some discussion. But I think on the whole, I've not found it very successful to directly try to think, I'd like to teach the principle that what's better is that the principle comes out through the way you do things, the way you are, the way you interact with people, and your understanding of things, and how they reflect the same principles. So that was all I prepared. Is there time for some questions? I've forgotten what sort of time I started here. But
What has been the kind of reception? What have you seen in your students when you, for example, teach this? And what kind of reception have you had?
as I say, with this kind of idea, when I've been trying to be more explicit in teaching the principle, I usually get fairly sort of blank looks or disinterest. I think I have a feeling it's because I tend to get into a lecture mode, and as if I'm trying to tell them how to think. And I think that's where I'm.
There's always ways, for example, to open up the phenomena of each one of the things and engage in conversation.
Yes.
Family, community, country. There's to open up. There's always a way.
Yeah.
Without having to lecture.
Yeah. No, I think it's true. Anyway, I'm not very successful at that kind of thing. I remember I had to take a year 8 PSHE lesson. I was just asked to do it, to fill in for somebody else, on bereavement and grievance, about death and losing relatives, and knowing that it was very sensitive to some of the students. Some of them, live with their grandparents, and their grandparents died recently, or an uncle, or even a parent. And I was very uncomfortable. And no matter what I did, it was not me. It was not my place. I think also because they're girls, I think they more easily open up to a mother figure in dealing with more personal issues. And I've often found that that's, there's definitely a big difference in the way they react to female teachers compared with male teachers.
Well, you sound very approachable.
Thank you very much.
You said at the beginning it was very difficult. What was it that was so difficult? Was it the behaviour or just being in front of people?
Well, it was the behaviour and managing behaviour, managing a group of teenagers. I think I was too used to having workshops in which I was already put into a position of great respect, and those who attend workshops are sort of ready to receive whatever you say.
You mean the unification?
Yes.
Oh,
I mean, that was my background. And so when I started teaching, I didn't know how to deal with a difficult student who refused to do what they were told to do, or was reacting in a bad way. And I think also, I think because of that sense of pressure on me, that I felt very self-conscious, then that nervousness then made me forget basic things to do, like to give them homework or to, so I dismissed them all. Like, oh, well, I forgot to give them homework. And I would, and also trying to learn how to teach, you get told so many things. You should do this and this, and you should do this and this, and it was just overwhelming to me how to put them into practice. When I finally started to get into the school that I'm in now, then I had some really helpful teachers around me, and it was really helpful that they said, just don't worry about it not being perfect. I wanted to do everything that I was told to do. Have to do this and that, and teach this way and that way. And I couldn't think of all those things. But once I got to a position where I was relaxed and could just be myself and allow things to be not right, then I could start putting right one thing at a time and not get worried.
Well, you sound very successful. You've been there for 16 years.
Yes. Well, if that's success, I hope it is. I hope it is. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes wonder whether they would have done well anyway. But, no, it's good. It's very, very rewarding. So I don't know if that's useful.
In your particular school, is there much political influence, as in pushing certain attitudes towards LGBT or just, this sort of? Are you aware of any sort of agenda or anything going on?
Oh yeah.
See you
really?
tomorrow,
Okay.
please.
Oh well, no, I won't. I won't be here tomorrow. So nice to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you. Okay. I'm sure I'll meet you again. I hope so. So see you all tomorrow.
I mean, as an independent school, it's less influenced by politics and government policies. We're just sort of one step away from that. But we have instead of Ofsted, there's the Independent Schools Inspectorate, which does pretty much the same thing. So the same kind of checks are coming through, and there's constantly pressure on independent schools to match up to expectations. Actually, I mean, political influences are quite negative towards independent schools, trying to point out things that are wrong. You only get good results because you pick out those people who've got lots of money, that kind of thing. and there's constant pressure to take away the charity status of independent schools. They have a charity status, tax-free. So anyway, there's all those kind of pressures. But yes, certainly so therefore the school is always trying to please government as well. So we have to go through lots of making policies for this, that, and the other. So just recently, I think 2 years ago now, one sixth former, so she's declared herself to be lesbian, and she's started an LGBTQ plus club. And so this has been jumped on by teachers who want to promote it. And that is very uncomfortable for me. I feel it distorts things because so much attention is given to her, and I don't know who attends that club, but attending that club is a declaration of some sort of affiliation there, even though the idea of the club is just to promote respect and understanding. It creates all kinds of complications. But then she's given a platform to speak in front of the school, and they invite somebody from Stonewall to come and talk to the school, I was mentioning earlier. So yeah, it's those kind of influences are in the school. And yeah, it was interesting because one of the other teachers came up to me just recently, just a month ago, and out of the blue asked me, "What do you feel about this?" We had an assembly on that kind of topic, and she felt very uncomfortable with it, and she has more traditional values and views. And was reacting strongly to it, and she obviously, for some reason, expected me to sympathise with that, which I did. And I said, I think there probably are quite a few teachers who feel very uncomfortable about this, but it's very difficult to say anything because there's this difference between what you're expected to say and what you actually feel.
Of what your views are.
Yeah. So that is a difficult reality at the moment. Yeah.
But do you have any trainings, or are you aware of some training? Because that's what I understand. The teachers are required to go through some kind of training.
No, not with regards to that. If I was required to do a PSHE lesson on some aspect of relationship and sex education, then I would be given various materials as a guideline for that. And what you were saying about the resources that the school has are a very significant thing. And yeah, as I say, Stonewall is the sort of automatic source of all knowledge on sex at the moment, which is, it's very distorting and very unbalanced. So, if there are other sources of information, it's much better. So it's the kind of thing which,
But in terms of the school being required to have a policy, how you respond in certain situations, and all the teachers have to have kind of similar response, yeah?
yeah.
For example, when you have children transitioning or basically...
That's true, yeah. We had a talk about it. I mean, when we have teacher training days at the beginning of each term, then that's the kind of thing that is read to us. I don't think it has very much influence on most teachers. We think what we think. But obviously it means that we have to answer questions in the right way if we are asked as to what is the school's policy on this and that. We have to know what the school's policy is. But I mean, I'm not in a position as a school leader. But obviously that would be very difficult.
I had
claiming to be a girl coming.
We're a girls' school.
Yes, no, I'm just saying. You haven't had a transgender
No.
girl living in a boy's body applying.
Yeah, I know what you mean, yeah. No, I mean, I don't know how, you know, with the very definition of having a girls' school and a boys' school, presumably, is now something really controversial.
Now they can declare themselves and they can join the girls' school. That's the point. It's happening.
Yeah, no, never. Certainly hasn't happened in our school, no. I mean, I know lots of girls who are very much like boys. You know, that they might be described as tomboys. That's the kind of standard terminology, or at least was probably not very acceptable. You know, a few girls, they want to wear trousers. That's fine. You know, that's about as far as it goes in our school. It's not a problem really. But I know there are some homosexual teachers, and they, of course, are immediately the ones that get involved with the LGBTQ club, and and then it's very uncomfortable because it's like because they're involved with it, it's making a separation between them and the other teachers. The ones I've known for a long time, then that's fine, but yeah, it can be a bit uncomfortable.
Story from a blessed family in Poland, in Warsaw, because the Warsaw mayor is now a gay person openly, and he made this LGBT declaration. So some schools, like all it takes is one teacher, and this is from this sister who was telling me, a blessed family, that her daughter had this matriculation kind of ball where they dance, they perform some dance. So the parents were not informed about it, but her daughter, because they talk, she said, "Oh, we are going to be dancing like girls with girls and boys with boys." And they have this Polish traditional dance called polonez, and the parent is shocked not only to see what's happening, but also it was openly explained to them that we are doing this because we want to support this LGBT. Even there are no students in that school whatsoever, but the school, because one teacher decided to, who was in charge, to support this so that the children already can be kind of supportive of the idea. So none of the children were gay or lesbian, but they had to dance, girl with a girl and boy with a boy, in order to support LGBT. So that's what's happening, even in a Catholic country where she goes to Montessori school, her children, and then it was like very respectable school, but they still do it. So I'm surprised that you don't have to go through training, because other teachers were kind of shocked. But the decision was made without consensus.
I think in Britain, there's much more a whole cultural tradition of freedom where nobody likes to be told what to do. So even though some policies or instructions are around, then nobody's going to enforce them.
But the parents should be able to respond to this if they are not informed. Why should they be told during the event when it's already...
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in that situation, it seems a bit funny, I see.
The children also pick up, like you say, they pick up from who you are. They also can see their parents' reaction, yeah?
Yeah.
Because the daughter didn't tell her why they were doing it. She just informed the mom.
Yeah.
Oh, we are just dancing with a girl and boys with a boy. So there are things that like we maybe don't affect us, especially the young people yet, but when you have children, you have to deal with this. It's a parent, not having to be a teacher.
Biology department is quite clear. Because in biology, you teach about the way things are, and it's true there are asexual creatures and there are bisexual creatures, and you know there's a variety of creatures. So, but you know, there's clearly a principle of male and female in the majority. So you know, the natural world speaks of a certain pattern, and then teaching about human reproduction in biology. You know, it's very clear what the organs are designed for, and so the biology department's pretty independent from the other parts of the education, the way it is at the moment anyway. I'm not aware of any constrictions that the biology teachers have to follow.
I think there are also the question of social science, because nowadays we understand more that it's in a school that a lot of stereotypes, prejudice circle. If you compare others public place, it's in school that a lot of these behaviors, ideas exchange between persons. And for France, the idea is to say we have to talk about these ideas of sexual identity, these ideas of gender, not to say because it's true, but it's to say some persons talk about that, we can discuss together and try understand together what it's meaning somewhere. Because we can hear sometimes that somebody he was attacked by 6% because he defended a gay couple, homosexual couple. Because homosexual couple, homosexual person, or some others are attacked and get some comment. At school, you can see sometimes, not everywhere, not every time, if a boy is staying with a group of girls just to discuss, to be friendship, and he is not in couple with one of her. Some of us of the school can look and say, you are not in couple with her, one of her. You should be homosexual, not? And so somewhere school is a place where parents, one mission of school is to protect the children, to protect the student, and the schools and the teachers try to see in what they show. They give some stereotypes, they give some prejudices. It's difficult. And social science, they understood that we can't continue to say women are like that, men are like that. It's not 100%, but we can, social sciences encourage to say most of the women, most of the men are like that, but not in totally. And that's why they suggested the ideas of gender, more to separate sexual biology, that meaning the body of a person. Because in biology we understand that the body of a woman is not working exactly the same that the body of man. But after you have social codes, if you see a little girl of 8 years old and she has not long hair, she has short hair, but she, by external way, you don't see that she is a girl. You can't see. But if she say a masculine or a feminine name, first name, your point of view will not be same. if you are a girl and you see it's a boy and this person say a masculine first name, you can be interested, attracted. But if she is giving a feminine, this girl who look her, we have a totally over behavior. And yes, it's many things. That's why they are talking about social construction. In Fiji, it's normal that men have a skirt. If in official place.
And in Scotland as well.
Yeah, and we are not saying, they are girls, they are women. It's what we are.
Yeah.
So we start also to, and it's extreme examples, but in our societies, we are common to react easily by appearances. And it's not only about sex, gender, but also about rich, poor people. Many things are working about appearances. And for France, you have education of morality, civism, where you try to share the values of Republic. I try again to understand what's meaning the values of Republic. But the idea is how to debate together for different questions, how to express our own point of view without violence, without prejudices. Yeah, many
And the
things.
stereotypes.
Yeah, we are not
to
only
break it
about
up.
stereotypes, but we can talk about nuclear, clonage, different topics. But the idea is that every student can feel that they can express their point of view, what they think. And about sexually, LGBT, it's a movement that created during the 60s, 70s, 80s, because they felt that they had to regroup different current of fighting to defend their rights. From history, we see that there were always homosexual persons, but the looking were different. I studied a bit about ancient Greek societies. They don't talk about homosexual, heterosexual, but more about who dominates, who is dominated. It's more like that. And the marriage were more about lineage, to give heritage, a patrimoine. But after for the pleasure of bodies, it were different. So today schools, it's somewhere between how it's normal for families, what is defending for individuals, because we have also to build peace societies without violence. There are many discussions. And in Western Europe, we see also different kind of families. Nuclear families, it's one father, one mother. But at school, we start also to see kind of family larger. I mean, if you have a problem with one pupil, you ask to a family that come and explain the situation, but this family can send an uncle, an aunt, niece, because this person in the family, he has this position to manage the school for children. So I think it's important that we can be honest how we see the situation and avoid that there are some behavior of one group who think that the fighting is continuing and we should promote it continuously. I mean, LGBT, they should a moment integrate heterosexual one day, because otherwise we will be right to say they are in opposition with heterosexual. But at the beginning, it was to defend their right to live, right to exist in a public space. So even them, they started to find another way to express some rights, some possibility to be in public space.
Mm.
Sorry, I was different direction, but I thought about that when I was studying to become a teacher. There were many different situations, and we should in France, yes, express that we should be respectful of each other more than you are a man, you are a woman, because somewhere there are social construction, but it's not to say it's false, but depends of how individuals with their cultural family heritage can react each other, each families. I'm still continuing to build my minds.
Okay.
Oh, well, it wasn't your topic, was it?
Right. Okay.
So would you say that you really enjoy the job now? And
Finally, yes. I think I thought about 3 years ago. I enjoy this. Finally, yes. Yes, I do. Yeah. Anyway, if we have a chance to continue at some point to build on this kind of conference, I mean, if we had a focus for like what would it take for us to build a school if we wanted to create a unification, a school that came out of the unification movement, and there are several in other countries. Then that would provide a focus for well, then what would we do in creating policies? Or I think those would be the challenging questions and might create a very precise set of questions to deal with. But anyway, I hope it's useful just to reflect on our experience as teachers and encourage those who want to be teachers.
Just in terms of going forward, do you see how the internet is going to affect education at the level you're teaching in the future? Do you see?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, it's massively affecting already.
In what way?
Well, because information is so easy to get, then it completely changes what needs to be learned. Students very easily get to sense, well, I don't need to learn anything because all the information is there anyway. So it affects teaching in a major way, but it's really helpful, of course, because you can look up things in a split second. Just have an idea. Oh, well, I don't know what's the the behavior of aluminium, or something, and you can just look it up, and you can put it right there on the board straight away, and that's great. And there's all kinds of educational resources which are there at the snap of your fingers.
In some ways, it changes the nature of teaching, doesn't it? Because I had the experience where I was teaching slightly older children, older people, but I gave a lecture on some marine science issue. I studied a long time with it, and then after the lecture, someone said, "Oh, that's one on YouTube," and we looked at it. That was a much better lecture. It was full of videos and examples and nothing. It was all really live. So at the end of it, I thought to myself, what was the point of me teaching that? I could have just put the video on, and then we would have had time for discussion. So I have the sense that in some subjects, especially science-type subjects, it is going to be more a question of teachers discussing the content rather than teaching content.
Yeah, there's a lot of ideas towards that. What's called a flipped classroom, where students study something and then just come to you with questions. The key thing, though, is that a teacher is creating a motivation through the relationship. And yeah, I sometimes put on a video, but that's just the opportunity to go to sleep. But if I'm doing it individually and explaining things, and I'm asking questions, then of course it's a different circumstance. So I don't think teachers will get replaced, but yeah, certainly the availability of information is changing the picture tremendously.
At school you have hand activities, manage things, but by YouTube it's only a screen.
Yes, that's right. It's a lot. You don't interact with it that much, and yeah, that's really the major thing in a classroom. Is to do something. But yeah, I mean, so they're starting to think of using iPads so that every student has an iPad, and how you can teach that way, and that's quite difficult. Our school wanted to introduce iPads for the whole school, and then they gave them to the teachers to start with, so we could play around with them and see what's possible, and then it stopped there. It hasn't. That was about 5 years ago. But some schools are doing that, so that everybody has an iPad, and there's a lot of capacity for doing things, but there's a lot of difficulties, because as soon as you have an iPad, lots of distractions. So how to keep the focus when you've got a screen that can flip from looking at pictures to actually what you're meant to be studying rather quickly. Yeah. Very good. Okay. All right.
We have this response form, so if you want to, I will put it in the dining room, and if you want to fill